Hi there. Good afternoon, everyone. Thanks for coming. I guess everybody knows, I noticed actually everything is skewed to the right here. Everybody's close to the door, so I know I'm the last speaker between you and the celebration. There's a gentleman in this section here. I was talking to him, and he's from Australia. And in Australia, you're always between, the sessions have to be fairly precise because you're always between them and a beer, per se. They're very good work-life balance there. So I feel like this is even more difficult because I'm between you guys and getting on a bus to go to Universal Studios or wherever the celebration is tonight. So thank you very much for coming. My name is Darwin Schweitzer. I'm a program manager at Microsoft. I'm actually in a group now that's called AI&R, so it's Artificial Intelligence and Research, which is part of Harry Shum's org. I've been working on solutions, which we'll be talking about today, for almost the last 2 years. And we actually kind of a background on solution templates. Last year at Ignite, almost exactly a year ago, we went public preview with 6 solutions. So we had 6 solutions that were available. And now we're actually up to 37 solutions. And we're getting solutions authored by different groups within Microsoft, within some of the data scientists within our own team. So we'll talk about 2 of those solutions particularly today. One is called Time Series Insights using Twitter, and the other one is called Quality Assurance. It's a quality assurance for manufacturing type scenario. So let's get started. I want to ask a couple of questions, a couple asks off the beginning. One of them is, how many of you have a Twitter account? So just a show of hands. So many of you. How many of you have actually created a Twitter application before? Okay, so that's good. So one of the things you would need to do the Twitter time series analysis is essentially create a Twitter application, get your OAuth tokens, and we'll talk about that later. There's also a great video that one of our data scientists from the UK did, which actually kind of walks you through one of these scenarios. So if you find it compelling, you could go watch the video and get all the pieces, and I'm going to demo this today as well. Other question I wanted to ask is, I have to look at my, how many of you have an Azure subscription or an Azure account? A number of you. How many of you are those personal accounts, like MSDN accounts? Show of hands. Okay, and then, or a trial account, like a sponsored account. And then how many people have you're using your work Azure account to do stuff? Okay, so one of the things I have, and it's an ask, and one of the reasons I handed out my business card is what I'm trying to figure out, because I used to work as an architect for a utility, and at the utility, there was a gentleman, his name was Bill, and Bill was the storage guy, and Bill decided, he was like the guy that everything went through Bill. And one of the things with traditional data centers is there's definitely a hierarchy and a pecking order inside data centers. And what I would like to find out, for instance, is if you find it compelling enough today to go deploy one of these solution templates, I would like to, if you could, send me an email if you're willing to take like a 15, 20-minute call, kind of give me some feedback. What were the challenges? It was easy if it was your account, but if you're using your work account, was your Azure administrator, giving you a resource group name, and as a result, you didn't have the right privileges to deploy some of these things. So anyway, that's one of the asks I have. So, and if any of you didn't get my card, my email is up there. It's darsch@microsoft.com. Hopefully I spelled it all correctly. Looks like it's okay. And then the third ask I have is really, I've already mentioned it. Hopefully somebody would be willing to provide some feedback and let us know, what you like about it, what you don't like about it, what the challenges are in, deploying some of these solution templates into Azure based on the type of account you have. So let's get started. So this is, about your advanced analytics practice. Now, advanced analytics, predictive analytics, business analytics, machine learning, deep learning, artificial intelligence, data mining, lots of these things really in similar words or words that describe a space. Sometimes what's known as advanced analytics may be AI and something else in the future, and so that it's really a term. But what we're going to talk about today is really some simple things about questions that you would ask your business as you were actually developing some advanced analytics or one of these other things that we just mentioned. And then how can solution templates help you with that type of scenario? So how do you accelerate your advanced analytics practice? And the answer there is answer business questions. So, and they tend to be fairly simple business questions as well. There's about, and I left the link for the video on this. There's a gentleman from our Boston data science office that did sort of the 5 questions that you can ask, that a data scientist can ask, and that's what we're going to go over right now. So the first one, which is, and the 2 solutions that we look at today, both use classification algorithms. In the case of Twitter time series insights, we're trying to determine whether the sentiment is positive, or is it negative, or is it neutral. So it's a sort of multi-class. It's not just 2, but there's multiple. It's not a binary thing, but there's multiple sort of classifications that can happen. And then the second one, which is manufacturing, quality assurance for manufacturing, is determining whether something is it broken or is it good? Is there something that's a quality problem that's happening on the line that you should have to deal with? And so classification is probably one of the most popular, and you probably maybe heard the term a supervised algorithm before, or supervised learning. Classification is a type of supervised learning, because what you need to do is to provide a target variable. So you have to provide some data to train the algorithm that says, in this case, these things were positive sentiment or negative sentiment or neutral sentiment, or the customer churned. They left the telco company and they went to the competitor, or no, they didn't. And so you need to have those target variables in order for classification algorithm to actually go and classify that type of thing. So that's one of these scenarios. The second one is this weird? So this is like anomaly detection. I have, the dog thing is interesting here because the time series insights scenario, we called it, at least I called it Project Hudson. My wife, my kids are now older. They're like 21, 23, and 26. So we have no kids in the house anymore. So we got a dog. So the dog his name is Hudson. He's a little Yorkshire Terrier Maltese cross. And he, grabs on my pant leg and kind of, drags me or tries to drag me. He's too small to drag me. I drag him across the living room. So we came up with this idea that and time series insights is an iteration of that. Essentially, I went around and bugged all the different devs to basically get all their features into a solution so we could show off all the different things that we were doing. And so that's what this Project Hudson was. And in the case of this, from that story, anomaly detection is, in this case, you're looking for the cat instead of the dogs, or you're looking for an anomaly, potentially in a web server log, something that's an anomaly, an IT anomaly that you want to deal with, which is out of the ordinary. And so anomaly detection is one of the second classifications of algorithms that you would answer this question with. The next one, which is regression based, is how much or how many. So in this case, especially here in Orlando, I was actually here basically the 1st of September through the 8th of September, and left the Friday before Irma happened, because my son lives here in Orlando, so we were visiting. And Seattle's been very warm this year as well, but we were out, we played golf one day, and it was like 93 or 94 degrees with all kinds of humidity. And so I definitely wanted to know what was it going to be like the next day if I went out golfing, because the one day I needed to drink lots of water and go into the air conditioning area. But what this would allow us to do is, based on a history of temperatures for a particular location, for a particular time of year, what is the likelihood that the temperature tomorrow is going to be 75, or is it going to be 67, those type of things. And so this is basically a math question. You're coming up with a number, you're charting sort of a plot of the values, and then you're sort of determining something that's going to be solved by a regression algorithm. The other one, and this is in an area, the ones we've talked about so far are in those classification of supervised learning algorithms. Clustering, things like k-means clustering as an example, are unsupervised learning. So in this case, you don't need a target variable that says this customer is going to leave, or this product in the case of quality assurance is going to fail, or it's going to, or it's a good product. But what you're trying to do here is put things into a cluster. So for instance, potentially I use Google Play for music, and maybe I'm listening to, Frank Sinatra music, or, from the Rat Pack or something like that. What it's going to try to do is take me and my profile, my age, and everything else like that, along with the music that I like, to try to guess if somebody else that has similar attributes to me would also like that type of music. So maybe it's going to recommend, the next time I use Google Play, it may recommend that I should listen to Dean Martin as an example because I like Frank Sinatra as an example. So, and clustering isn't a perfect science in a lot of ways, because you can draw these clusters in a lot of different ways, and it takes a lot of interpretation. And of course, these things are not used independently as well. Sometimes you can use clustering, and then you could use a supervised algorithm or vice versa as part of an ensemble to actually do more work. The last one, which I know the least about, is sort of reinforcement learning, but this is sort of next best offer type scenario. It's used in gaming as an example, but basically it's a scenario where the algorithm is learning as it makes decisions and kind of learning on itself, and actually getting better at solving a particular problem. So those are sort of the 5 questions, and the link there to Data Science for Beginners videos that Brandon Rohr did from our Boston team is available. And there's a series of videos, and depending where you are in your education in this space, it may be, interesting, or it may be rudimentary, but it's a great, kind of a great way to, if somebody comes up to you in your workplace and says, we want to solve this, you can kind of run it through this litmus test and say, can I answer one of these questions, or is it totally out of the blue that this is not even possible? Also, in this image, if you click on this image, this is actually, I saw it was used by the last session as a resource link as well. This is a machine learning cheat sheet. And so you can see here, as an example, you've got anomaly detection up in the top left quadrant in red. You got clustering in purple in the middle. You got multi-class classification and two-class classification, kind of that yes/no or versus multiple classes. So those everything on the left of that slide is classification, and then the pink on the over on the right side is, or you guys' left, is regression. And so same type of thing when you're starting with something like this cheat sheet, something like those 5 simple questions can kind of give you a methodology to kind of get started in this. Also, and this is very interesting, machine learning and all of these things are kind of come from AI, so artificial intelligence, which is becoming very hot now. Microsoft and Google and Facebook and Amazon and tons of deep learning frameworks like CNTK from Microsoft, TensorFlow from Google, Caffe, which was done at Berkeley, Caffe 2, which was some work was done at Facebook, PyTorch is an example. Deep learning is super crazy. One of the things I asked the gentleman at the back, inside of PowerPoint now, if you ever have a scenario where you speak to folks that I used to travel, and sometimes I would go to Japan, it will actually do simultaneous translation into 66 languages as I speak inside of PowerPoint. And that's because of things like deep learning to be able to do that speech recognition and image recognition and so forth. A lot of that has to do with GPU machines. I think it was back in 2012, some gentlemen entered a contest and they crushed everybody with a small GPU machine. And then the rest is history. It just kind of has got very crazy from there. And in the deep learning space, kind of the most popular deep learning type of networks, you have these convolutional neural networks and recurrent neural networks. And so now, as opposed to just, say, data mining, machine learning, predictive analytics, which is more dealing with just data, deep learning, which is also part of machine learning as well, gives you, speech and natural language and visual, all of sort of, you think of the five senses, the things for, being able to recognize a picture and say, this picture is a snow leopard as an example, or this is a cat. This is maybe you're a retailer and you're selling clothing, and you can actually recognize the pixels in the picture and know that you should categorize this as a blue dress and put it into the blue dress category on your website as opposed to a different color scenario. Now, how many of you attended Joseph Soros's session potentially on Monday? Okay, so in his session, he talks about, and this is where we're going to kind of go into the solution template side of this now. He talks about cloud, which solution templates are all Azure-based. We're deploying Azure services using ARM templates, using Azure functions, using web jobs to do some of the things that ARM templates can't do. And then, of course, it's all about data, and Joseph had mentioned that data is the oxygen for AI, so a lot of the time, and in fact, if you went to any of the presentations on Vienna, which is the next version of Azure ML, the Azure ML Workbench, one of the things that does so well is helps with data wrangling, which they always say is like 80% of the effort. That's all data work, and of course you can scale that with Spark on Spark clusters and different things like that. But data really is necessary, and good quality data for you to be able to answer some of these questions. And then again, sort of this scenario of cloud, big data, and sort of the Hadoop and different ecosystem that was involved and made very viable in the cloud. And then of course the massive amount of data that you can collect on relational sources, NoSQL sources. I was really impressed this week. I went to a session on Cosmos DB, and the fact that it has key value pair, it has document database store, and it has as well as graph built in, and some more multiple models coming into the offering is pretty cool, because not everything is a relational problem anymore, and there may be a scenario where you want to use a globally scalable NoSQL database as an example. And of course, all of this makes intelligence much more possible and available to more people as a result. So now let's talk a little bit about what solution templates are. So solution templates really are these combinations of Azure services, and we basically deploy these through either one or more ARM templates to be able to deploy them into a resource group. So when we look at the demo, it's going to create a resource group. It's going to then put a number of services into that resource group. It's going to connect them together and build sort of an end-to-end scenario, which we'll see here in a bit in an architecture slide. And then from there, the beauty of that is you can actually delete the resource group through our UI or in the portal itself, and all those resources are gone. My best example, we have one which I'm not showing today, but we have a data warehousing and modern pattern, which is one of our tutorials, and it takes about 25 minutes to build this pretty amazing thing, which has, structured data. It uses Hadoop, it uses Azure Data Factory, it uses SQL Azure Data Warehouse. It's got HT Insight there for the Hive queries. It has Power BI, it has analysis services, and it has Jupyter notebooks. All that stuff gets built in 25 minutes, and I can destroy it just as quickly after I'm done with it if I want to. And I looked at when I started my career in data warehousing back in 1993, it took 16 IBM people 6 months to get a mainframe working in Houston that would do a lot of what you can actually do as, basically infrastructure as code, and be able to deploy that. And of course, there's a lot of data work you would have to do around that, but getting that infrastructure laid down is what solution templates really strives to do. It also strives to make it end-to-end, so that you're not just getting a piece, you're getting everything from the consumption side, the curation piece in the middle, or I should say the consumption side on the end, the curation piece, as well as the capture or the ingestion pieces on the front of that as well. And sort of on the value side of this, and a number of solution architects that work for Microsoft find these pretty valuable to basically accelerate either awareness, because not everyone knows that Microsoft even has a lot of these services. You guys probably definitely do after being here all week. It also allows you to educate yourself. So if you're, say you're a DBA, and I used to be a SQL Server DBA back in the 2000 days, was when I started. And so there's some great solutions that may teach you how to use our services so that you can actually do machine learning inside of SQL Server, and it'll actually help you as a DBA kind of accelerate your learning in the machine learning area. Also, it's going to hopefully reduce the time to market to productionize a solution, because you're going to be able to deploy it. You're not going to have to wait those 6 months like you had to back in the 90s. It's really gets the infrastructure down in a matter of minutes or days, so that you can go on to solving the business problem, doing a proof of concept, doing a pilot. And then in general, to the topic of the session, really expand your analytics and AI capabilities, because maybe you're not familiar with some of the stuff that's done with regression in one of the solutions, and this can kind of be a kickstart to actually getting started. All right. So where did the idea come from? I'm going to go talk to these guys over here, because the audience is mainly over here, and I'm horrible because I teach a class in the summer at the University of Washington. It's a professional and continuing education class that spans Azure, AWS, and Google. And half of the people are online, and half of the people are in the class. And for whatever reason, I tend to, and you guys know my tendencies because most of the people are over here, but I feel very sorry for these gentlemen over here. So please, throw a tomato at me or something to make me look that way. So where do these come from? These were created basically from real customer engagements. In the case of the quality assurance as an example, if any of you saw Scott Guthrie's session on Monday, Danielle Dean was in that, and she was talking about Jabil as a company. And so that was some of the work on quality assurance for manufacturing kind of came from some of that work our Boston team did with them. And then so they gathered some learnings, some various things, and then in general, the whole idea was so that we can take our data scientists as well as our engineers and actually build something that's reproducible, that a customer can come along and leverage. And a lot of this is just based on I'm sure many of you use GitHub. The days before GitHub were interesting because people didn't share code as much as they do now. And I'll show you my GitHub at the end, but basically, you can go get ARM templates, you can go get, Java code, Python code, all those type of things, working examples that are out on GitHub. And this is just sort of taking that a little bit further, but I'll also show you that for time series insights, the data science virtual machine, as well as for our Kafka Spark solution, I actually have deploy to Azure buttons right in my GitHub, where you can click on that button and actually do the deployments into your Azure subscription right from there as well. So what do these solution templates look like? And so I kind of blocked it out a little bit. But when I talked about this, talking capture, and this to some degree can be thought of as an IoT scenario as well. I'm using Twitter. You could yank out the Twitter and put in some IoT devices and have a nice IoT scenario. But the beauty of Twitter is it's your sort of subject matter, whatever you care about in keywords, you can enter those keywords. You just need a Twitter application, and you can basically run this. And then it takes the data, goes through Event Hubs, sends it through Stream Analytics, and lands some of it in blob storage. So of course you could actually fire up an H2 Insight cluster as an example and look at that data historically after there's enough data accumulated there. It also calls a Azure Machine Learning web service, and so it actually copies an experiment, runs the experiment, deploys it as a web service, and then that's actually used as part of a web service call for Stream Analytics as the data streams through. And then goes into another Event Hub and lands in Time Series Insights. Has anybody heard about Time Series Insights this week? Okay, a few of you had. So it's a great sort of operational reporting system. It's kind of like it has built-in storage. It kind of has a little bit of time series historian type stuff built into it. And so it's a great scenario. And as we look at Twitter, and one of the things I asked you guys about, if you have a Twitter account, if you want to tweet out something to, @DataSnowman or send something out to pound solution templates, what we'll do is we'll look at you and see if we can find your tweet here in a few minutes when we do the demo. I should have mentioned that up front. And then we also take the data, land it in a SQL database, and then we can actually show what that looks like in Power BI as well. We actually use Power BI Embedded, which can be basically Power BI deployed as an ARM template on Azure, because there's no guarantee that you as a customer may have Power BI at work, as an example. And Power BI doesn't work if you use your Hotmail, Gmail, Outlook, Yahoo, and that type of thing. And so that's what we'll look at in more detail in the demo today. All right. The other thing with this is I talked about these solution templates, and this can be helpful. I don't know what industries you guys are in, but there's a lot of different vertical industries that are represented here. So we've got, retail and e-commerce scenarios. We have healthcare, manufacturing, energy, utility, space, kind of lumping those together, and then also financial services and insurance. And so hopefully there's something here that covers you as what you do in your job. And if not the case, we also have a number of different horizontals as well. So an example, advertising and marketing. Marketing is in most, if not all, organizations. Customer service as well. Everybody has a customer to a degree, whether it's a government that has a citizen as a customer, or whether it's a bank or even a not-for-profit organization. There's always someone there who's the customer. And then time series insights kind of falls into the social media and kind of looking at sentiment and social media. And then we have a number of things that kind of fall more into information technology. Kind of if we were going to look at Joseph's, cloud and data and intelligence, this is doing the cloud infrastructure data pieces. And then of course, the ML and AI stuff can be added into this as well. One additional sort of categorization I wanted to give you is that you may sit there and go, well, we looked at those 5 questions at the beginning where we talked about, this is classification, et cetera. This kind of is a breakdown. There's about 17 of the 37 solutions that are classification problems and use classification algorithms. The next highest is 8 regression scenarios, and I give links to one particular solution that falls into this algorithm. AI and bots is kind of its own thing, so we may talk a little bit about bots, but artificial intelligence and bots is, again, a very popular topic in AI these days, and has been for a long time. I was over in Taipei at a Developer Days conference earlier this year, and the whole hackathon that we did was all on bots, and they created some very cool prototypes of bots there. They were very, very excited about it. We got 7 that are kind of data infrastructure scenarios, only 1 clustering, which is lightly clustering, but more of a recommendation scenario. It's kind of collaborative filtering, which is in quotations there at the bottom. And then the 1 anomaly detection scenario as well. So these are kind of breakdowns or kind of ways to categorize the solutions that we have. And as I get more towards the end of this, I'll talk about the fact that we're building more solutions. We have partners building solutions. We have dev teams building solutions. And then we're also doing some things which are more like technical reference architectures as well. So right before the demo here, this link gives you the places that you can go to actually get to some of these. And so the Cortana Intelligence Gallery has been there for the last year, and those are a couple of short URLs that if you click on one, it'll take you to 25 solutions. If you click on the tutorials, it'll take you to 12 tutorials. They're just kind of like shortcuts in the gallery. Also, and the gallery is great, especially for people that may be implementers, the data scientists or developers or data management people, more technology folks. Azure.Microsoft.com has about 11 of these solutions represented there. So for instance, maybe someone who's in your company who's more on the business side, maybe out looking at Azure, or maybe your boss or someone that's in your IT management, maybe out there looking, and they'll find some solutions there. You can deploy them, say deploy to Azure, and deploy those right from Azure.com. We have several that are also in AppSource. AppSource is meant more to be sort of for business decision makers, and you can actually deploy from there. You also, as a partner, and we'll talk about partners that can help with some of these towards the end, a partner can actually, you can say, yeah, I want to try this, and by the way, I want to find a partner, and you can actually send a lead to the partner so they can contact you and help you out there. Inside of Cortana Intelligence Solutions, we call it KICS for short. It was Cortana Intelligence Quick Start. It was kind of the underlying deployment platform for this. It has a plus new in it, so if you go into deployments and click on plus new, you can get to all of these inside of there as well. And then I mentioned the GitHub repositories, and we'll look at that towards the end. And really, you could take this and put these anywhere. If you use one of these solutions, you want to embed them into your blog, or if you wanted to put them into GitHub, or you wanted to put them into a web page, it's just a URL. You click on the button, and it goes and starts to deploy these things. And so that may be appropriate for something that you do, because some of you may be bloggers or maybe developers and may be interested in this. So here's kind of a look at some of the solutions. There's about 10 of them up here. The ones that have been around the longest and probably get run still the most is sort of predictive maintenance, which kind of has an aerospace flair to it, demand forecasting, and vehicle telemetry. So sort of the bottom, your guys' bottom right three there are super popular. We're going to look at the purple one, which is the quality assurance one, and then another one, the Twitter's Time Series Insights, isn't on this particular slide. But really, you can go into the gallery, you can see a little card about what the thing does, you can click on it, and it'll take you to a summary and an abstract of what's involved. It'll show you the architecture, tell you about maybe how much it costs to run on a daily basis, and those type of things. So, enough talking. Let me get into a demo scenario here. All I have to do is make sure my laptop is working. Let's see, it's sleeping. So let's give it a little bit of a push. So one of the things which is interesting is a few years ago, let's say I'll demo this for you guys now. I did a presentation inside of Microsoft and I forgot my password. I forgot my network password. It's like I'm sitting there going, what is my password? I didn't know how to log on my machine. I just got this new ThinkPad, and as long as it works fine, I got the fingerprint reader now. So now at least I have a way to not be locked out, because that's amazing. I had to actually talk, and I was kind of doing a soft shoe and stuff. It was crazy. And then about 3 minutes in, I remembered what my password was. But let's have a look at this, since we talked about it a lot. I put my glasses on because my kids are in their 20s, which means I'm old. So this is what's known as AppSource. If you go into AppSource, it's at appsource.microsoft.com. If you look under the artificial intelligence category, some of them that are here, we've got demand forecasting, which we talked about a little bit, and then if we find the purple one here, right here, quality assurance. Now, when you click on this, the reason I said that this may be somewhere that someone in the business may go as well, there's some videos. So there's a video about Jabil and what they did and in sort of partnership with Microsoft. There's details on what's going on. There's this thing called Test Drive as well. If I click on Test Drive and I give permission for the fact that I want to look at this, this is going to bring up an embedded Power BI, so you have some idea what the consumption interface looks like. So this would be, if I'm going to go and spend tens of dollars a day to basically deploy this onto Azure, what am I going to kind of get in this? And so this gives you a workable sort of embedded Power BI report. It's interactive in that I can click on it. It's a cached Power BI report. It doesn't refresh in this case, but it gives you an example of what you can do. So that may be something that somebody in the business goes, oh, this is pretty cool. Let's go and use this. From there, other than having sort of let's go back to here. We also have this Get It Now button. So this is demand forecasting price optimization. Let's let me do this. Go back here. Source artificial intelligence. Let me just hit enter again. I think based on my resolution, I'm missing a button there. Go back here, and now what I'm going to do, instead of doing the test drive, I'm going to say get it now. So this will give you an idea. Every single one of these solutions that you deploy, It's going to ask you if you have an Azure account. If you do, you're going to click on the blue button. If you don't, it's going to ask you if you would like to go get a $200 trial subscription. And so that would be an option if you don't have one. I'm logged on to my Azure subscription, so I'm going to say sign in. So now what it's going to do is it's going to ask me, what do you want to name this? It's going to ask me, what's your Azure subscription, because you may have access to more than one. And then it's also going to ask you where you want to put it location-wise. And sometimes, depending on the type of solution it is, you may have, for instance, if it's a virtual machine, you may be able to put it anywhere inside of Microsoft's public data centers. If it's something that uses machine learning, which is available in about 4 of the data centers currently, you may get a restricted list to those 4 areas. So it just depends on what the solution is you're deploying. You notice here as well, it says the estimated daily cost to run this is $86.29. That's nice to know. In the class I teach, students are always renowned for basically going and clicking on something and running it, and basically they run up a $250 bill, and then they email me, and then we have to get a hold of each of the cloud vendors and try to say that, they left this thing going, they didn't turn it off, they didn't know how much it cost to run. But this gives you an idea of what it costs. It gives you a breakdown of all the things that are being used and kind of what the estimated cost is on a monthly, daily, sort of annual basis. So I'm going to call this, let's call it quality. How about that? I don't think I have anything named that. You can see I have a number of subscriptions here. One of the things that my developers must have known, I didn't sleep very well last night because I stupidly drank about 3 iced teas last night at dinner. And then I read Killing JFK, the book, and so I was awake till 11, and then my mind was going. I was like, so I churned out all kinds of great ideas for you guys today, but my sleep patterns were off. And then to kind of get me, to get the paddles on me today and make sure I was fired up, my developers decided to delete. They went in and because we're doing some testing, and we'll talk about how close we are to GA at this point. They're doing some bug bashing, and they decided to go in through the back in a script and just cratered all of my demos. They pretty much knocked out all my resource groups, which meant I had to build them this morning, but I was within 45 minutes, I was back, which is also the beauty of this. And so I'm going to go back and use the Kix test manual testing. I also used another account that I have, and I actually deployed into that account as sort of a disaster recovery backup, just in case they did it again. But they said they wouldn't. But I have that here as well. So that's also a nice thing about the cloud, is you can back up. If you lose your laptop, you can use a VM, and you can, of course, rebuild stuff pretty quick. You're going to click on Create. So you've got the name. You've got the subscription you're using, you got the location, you can put a description in there if you want. You click on Create, and now you may not be asked for anything else, but in this case, you're going to be asked for a SQL Server user ID and password. And in the case of the Twitter one, you would also be asked for the OAuth, the 4 OAuth keys, as well as the keywords you want to use. And I won't bore you with filling those out, but we'll look at that a little bit later. And also, we put things in here so that, like, for instance, if I go with my Darwin and then I come down here to the password and I type some stuff, we actually give you regex scenarios that make sure that you're picking a subscription that's not going to fail when it goes to Azure because it doesn't meet that. You can also kind of see it as well. So let me go in and I'm going to put in something that does meet the requirements. And sometimes they're amazingly long. And click on Next, and that's, in this case, this is all we have to do. So what this is doing now is it's going out to Azure, it's deploying ARM templates, it's deploying functions, web jobs to be able to do all this. And the beauty of this is I can actually go and watch this. If I click on the resource group, it'll take me out to the Azure portal. And also if there's a failure, if a particular failure step fails, maybe you're out of SQL Server quota for SQL Server database, and it would turn red and it would give you an error. You'd click on it, it would take you to the portal and would say that you're over your quota. And of course you could call support and get your quota increased, or you could go get rid of something if it was a dev environment. Maybe you want to get rid of some of the existing databases that are pushing you over the quota. So you can see this is basically building all these services. And if we just kind of, click on refresh, you can see all these things are basically being built here inside this resource group. And so now, after it's done, of course, I could delete this resource group, which is kind of what my team did last night using a PowerShell script and got rid of my stuff. But you can also delete it back in the UX, which I'll show you guys in a minute. What we'll do is we'll go look at the one that was broken, and you can see that my resource group is missing, and I'll delete that so you guys know how to delete it through the UX as well. So those are sort of the pieces. This will continue to run. This one takes about 25 minutes. It actually does some pretty cool things with some machine learning, and there's a lot of different data scenarios. We have another one that uses a ton of Cosmos DB, and it actually costs like $300 a day or something to run that one, because it actually is a very real Cosmos DB type of implementation. All right, so that's going, and we'll come back to that. The next place I wanted to show you guys was here inside of Azure. So this is, Azure at Microsoft.com. There's some big data solutions. There's about 11 of these, and the link is in the previous slides. And so as an example, here's a predictive marketing campaigns. And so basically it shows you a more simple architecture that probably shows up on the in the app source scenario, kind of shows you the different ingredients that go into this. And the same thing, if I click on this deploy to Azure button, it's going to take me out and take you through those same screens that are available for this particular solution. All right, so that's your second option. The one that has the most things in it is this one. So this is the Cortana Intelligence Gallery. So you can see we have fraud detection with SQL Server, population and health management, lots of good scenarios. I mentioned that one of the things, let's say, how many people here are sort of data management DBAs in the audience? Anybody? Okay, or developers? Okay, so a mix here. So one of the things here, one of my favorites is, where did it go? This one here, this loan credit risk with SQL Server, or this campaign optimization with SQL Server. If you're familiar with SQL Server but not familiar with our services running on SQL Server, you can deploy this. It deploys a virtual machine with SQL Server 2016 Enterprise, I think these are, not 2017. And then it runs you through a whole bunch of examples on GitHub on how you would actually set up our services using SQL Server. So these are great for vertical scenarios, because it's campaign scenarios, which is more of a horizontal, I guess, or some of the other ones which are healthcare oriented. Same type of thing here. For instance, if we went into quality assurance again as an example, we look at it here. There's a deploy, there's a try it now, which is like the test drive, and there's also sort of architecture slides that tell you more about the solution. In addition to those 25 solutions, and the one we're going to be looking at next is there are 12 tutorials. These tend to be more technical scenarios and less of a vertical or a horizontal type of business case to the more infrastructure and data-based. And so, for instance, if I click on time series insights, you're going to see that slide which I showed earlier with the architecture. You're going to see that it costs $12.45 sort of estimated daily cost. And I'm not going to click on the deploy button because I'm going to show you guys that from GitHub, but same type of scenario. This would be a place that you could find and deploy from after you decide that it's something you wanted to look at. Now, after it runs, basically you're going to end up in this interface. It's going to be open, and I told you that. So I started something back on 9/20. So this is the one that I went into today. I was in Management Studio, and I was trying to query the database. The database wasn't there, and I knew something was up. So you get this instructions page which tells you what you need to do, any type of configuration, or what you need to do next. This one, though, the problem, if I go up and I click on resource group as an example, it's going to tell me that my resource group doesn't exist because either through the portal or through script, this essentially has been removed. So it's going to tell me that those resources don't exist. So what I'm going to do in this case is I'm going to go back to this screen, and then I'm actually going to delete that. So in this case, the resources are all deleted in the portal. It's not going to cost me anything, but if I was deleting this from this interface because I didn't want to pay the $12.45 a day as an example because I was finished with it, basically you just click on it, click on clean up, and click on cleanup, and it basically deletes it. And if you go back to the resource group and there is stuff in it, it'll basically start to delete all those pieces piece by piece from that resource group. So now the part that I want to show you, which is really the value, I think, let's say that you were going to use an example. Maybe you go back to the office on Monday and somebody says, we got to do this IoT thing. We got streaming data. How do we do this? And you can say, well, I got this great demo. We can take it, we can deploy it, we can rip out the Twitter piece, and we can add in some things which are pulling telemetry from our vehicles. If you're a trucking company, as an example. But some of the things that it shows, and for instance, here's the what gets created. So if any of you have been sending tweets, let's actually go and analyze those tweets now. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab what's been created since this morning when I rebuilt this. And so far, there's been about 8,700 tweets since I finished this at about 10 o'clock this morning. And these are tweets that are really to various keywords. Now the keywords that I used, and I can either click here and say split the time series, or I can click over here on the count as well. I'm going to say, well, show me the topics. All right, and I should have reminded to do this earlier, but you can see here the topics that are super popular. Pound MS Ignite is the top one, followed by MS Ignite, and then pound hit refresh. That's Satya Nadella's new book, which just came out, so I put that in there as well. And then you've got Add Data Snowman and pound solution templates as an example. Now, if I wanted to basically look and see what you guys have done with the solution templates, I could come in here and I could say, show me only this. And it looks like there's only one event, it looks like at this point, which could be my tweet, so I'm not sure anybody did tweet. And then I can do a right click on this and I can say, explore events, and then you're actually going to be able to see the actual tweets. So I pretty much know that you guys, no avid Twitter users in here because nobody tweeted. Maybe it's too late in the day and you guys are going, damn, I'm not tweeting, I'm ready for the celebration event. But basically you can go in here, and so in this scenario, you could think of this being used by potentially like a marketing department, and maybe they want to look at your social media about your company, and basically you just need to bring that in, drop it through an event hub, land it inside of the time series historian, and be able to do some analysis of that. Let me go back. I'm going to just show you one more thing because that wasn't super exciting with just me sending that tweet. But if I come back here and we grab, again, a good range of data, and then maybe we look at it by topic, and then let's just pick Pound MS Ignite because it's our most popular. And then I can actually go through and say, well, let's look at this by sentiment score. And so now you can see that the majority of the sentiment has been positive. There's some that's neutral. There's some that's negative. There's about 7,000 and some tweets at this point. And we could say, well, this looks like a peak here. Let's look at this. Let's zoom in on it. So we go from 7,000 down to 1,000 rows. We'll take it a little bit further, zoom here, and then this is the peak I want to look at. And I can say explore data. Now this works almost this fast with hundreds of thousands or millions of records. And so it's definitely something for operational reporting, which is very useful. And this is just a good example to show how you could actually use this very quickly and hopefully find some value for this in your organization. Now back here in the instructions, if we go into the one that works, in addition to being able to click on this, which is going to take me to Time Series Insights, I can click on this link or this link, and it's going to take me to my embedded Power BI. So this is an embedded Power BI report that's using direct querying against SQL Server. So we had 770, now we have 65 and change in tweets, or 85 and change in tweets. If we wanted to just look at, say, English Great Britain tweets as an example, we can see that value. We can look at Spanish, and you can see things change as far as how things look there. We'll go back to English, where it looks like the majority of the tweets are. You can see what the green is positive, the gray is neutral, and the red is negative. So you can see in general Satch's book seems to be getting, more neutral and positive than negative for sure. You also have a word cloud down here, so if I wanted to look more closely at this word cloud, I could look at this and see some things. Now this is, again, a demo because it really shows what you can do with Power BI. This is embedded, but this could be Power BI running on powerbi.com as well. And then also how that kind of compares and contrasts to using the time series insights product for reporting. Now, the ML piece of this as well, let's show one more thing and then we'll come to the ML piece. If we were going to look at this over on the SQL Server side, so I'm inside Management Studio, and I'll show you the link here in a minute. If I click on execute on this, this one is going to use, that's my manufacturing, I'm going to hit cancel. It's gone to sleep on me, so let's do QA, this is the right one, connect. And then it switches to master. I just need to switch it back to the actual database. And then we can run this again. So this is Management Studio. In a second here, you're going to see we have 8824 rows here. And then the way you would get that information, which we like to do here, is if you scroll down to the bottom, we provide the server name, the database name, the username, and then we pretty much make sure you remember your password. We don't put that in clear sight, but you have all the things to be able to connect. You can also go in and truncate the database and change the keywords and so forth. And then on the machine learning side of things, and this is using Azure Machine Learning, sort of the GUI sort of orchestration-based UX for this. This isn't using the new first stuff that's used in the Azure ML workbench, but you can, in here you've got essentially the information, the data coming in from the web service. It's using a couple of R scripts as an example, and then at the end of this, it's actually producing output. So this is what's actually doing the sentiment, whether it's positive, whether it's negative, what the score is, and there's different thresholds to what probability or what percentage. Actually determines what the label is for this, whether positive, negative, or neutral. And so this gives you all the different pieces that went together in that document so that you can actually see all those things go together. Now you can go into the Azure portal here just as easy, just like we did in Time Series Insights, and you can basically go in and you can stop the Stream Analytics job, and you can change the Stream Analytics queries and make this into something that's more applicable for what you're trying to show as an example. So it is completely customizable after you deploy it as well. And then if you delete it and you deploy it again, you'll have to start back and redo those customizations, but at least it gives you that great starting point, and you can basically see all the services that are utilized. All right. So let me jump back to my slides. 5. And we're going to show a little bit of stuff on quality assurance, and we'll go from there. So inside of quality assurance for manufacturing, I think you guys saw this slide briefly, and as we were looking through the stuff on AppSource. But basically, the whole idea here is you have devices that are on a assembly line. It is essentially sending that data through Event Hub, through Stream Analytics, calling machine learning algorithm that's doing the categorization, similar to what was being done in the Time Series Insights with sentiment on the tweets. And then it's taking some of the data and going straight to Power BI using sort of real-time streaming into Power BI, and then it's also putting it into a database so that you can run queries against those things as well. This is the scenario here. So it says, why is quality assurance in manufacturing important? The whole idea here is, from the aspect of when you're doing manufacturing, if there's a quality problem, probably the best example I was involved with was a large French fry manufacturer in the Boise area, actually looked at doing quality assurance for manufacturing on their line that created French fries for McDonald's, as an example. And because it was a super important, McDonald's has quality restrictions on French fries, and they wanted to be able to tell early on that there was going to be a problem with the quality before they got to the back of it, pulled out a bag, and did some analysis of it, and then had to throw out a larger batch. And so they were basically doing quality assurance throughout the line, just like Jabil did in this case with devices. This is a good slide as well. It kind of goes with those first 5 questions. So what are some of the questions that that the customer has to do? So it has to be a sharp question. It has to be a question that's particular, like in the case of the French fry scenario. What's the probability of a French fry being less than 4 inches long, such that it's going to take away the McDonald's isn't going to pay for those at all, and you're going to basically have to throw that away or turn it into tots or into some other product. Data measures what you care about as well. So in the case of the quality assurance scenarios, you have to measure the things and the quality on the assembly line that you want to measure. Is the data accurate? So you have to make sure that you have the data that you need to be able to predict the likelihood of some type of fault or damaged technology or damaged French fries in this case. Data is connected. So in the case of these manufacturing floors as well, and as some of you may have maybe gone to some of the Azure Stack things this week as well, sometimes I used to call on wafer makers down in the Portland area, and I think they used to just make us do this so they could laugh at us, but they'd make us put those little booties on our shoes, so you'd walk through there and they would laugh at you. They knew you were a salesperson or a newbie because you had those boots on. But they had the same scenarios. Their fabs were not always connected to the network, but they had a number of computers that were essentially collecting information on the fabs, and then they would actually do analysis of that. And then sometimes you need a lot of data as well. And so to actually get to the point where you're actually able to predict scenarios, you may have to take, and in Danielle's session, they actually looked at images, and they could look at the components and see a component that was a good component versus a bad component, and use some vision capabilities to determine that. So we've already showed the scenario for quality assurance. I just want to show you one thing on the Power BI side. So on the Power BI side, we have essentially the ability to upload this report. This report is now going against the database that the streaming data is coming into, and if we could refresh this against that data, but it's more of a batch type of refresh process against the database. But in addition to this as well, there's also a real-time dashboard. Let's see what it's doing. Let's make sure my Power BI is not idle in some ways. Okay. My network goes south on me? Doesn't look like it. Something did. Let me go over here. Going this way. Connected. Okay, so I got some issue with Power BI, so we'll have to miss that. But basically, I was going to show you with Power BI, you can actually send from Stream Analytics and actually have a Stream Analytic output that sends live to Power BI. And sort of, and this will be a good test, is if we go over here and we look at resource groups and we type in Ignite and we look at the quality assurance one that I just did, if we go into the Stream Analytics job and we look at the outputs of this, and this will be running, actually it's failed, so something's happened with this as well. But basically what you do is you go and authenticate all of the Power BI outputs to Power BI, and then the data actually shows up over on the over on the side of Power BI. So I could actually, in this one, assuming that there isn't a major problem, I could actually restart this, and then the data should start flowing back into the database and back into my Power BI report as well. Okay. So I asked you guys what some of your roles were, and so who should use solution templates as an example. So there's a number of different roles here. You could potentially data engineers, which tend to do a lot of data integration and may do work with Hadoop and ETL tools and other data integration technologies, even Python to do data wrangling or data munging of data type of thing. Data scientists is an example. Developers, this whole scenario of AI developer and AI engineer, especially with the deep learning aspects that people are getting interested in that. Again, I think architects for scenarios of showing a solution, whether you're selling a solution internally to someone in your company or whether you work for a partner of Microsoft's or work at Microsoft as an example. We looked at a couple of the SQL Server scenarios that kind of show what the additional things that a DBA can do in this advanced analytics and machine learning and AI space. Of course, with SQL Server 2017 being released and the capabilities for machine learning and AI that are very good scenarios. And again, you could be a data analyst or a technical salesperson. There's all kinds of users of this, whether you're using it in an awareness way, whether you're using it for your own education or the education of the folks that you work with. And then also used as a way to accelerate something that could be a proof of concept or a pilot, even just within your company with no vendors present kind of thing. So this slide basically speaks to that. You can start with a demo. And I used to work years ago, I worked for Business Objects, and we sold some software to a very large bank, and we sold it into one particular part of the company, and then it kind of managed to go into a lot of other areas. So we started in marketing and then went into finance and different things like that. And I think it's whether you're an advocate for technology in your company or whether you're a salesperson selling technology, there's a lot of good ways to sell internally and then kind of expand into other areas that could where the tools can provide value. I mentioned it can use it for education for all those different roles that we have. That were mentioned in the previous slide. And then also you can look for a sort of a business transformation project. So maybe something that's mainly on-prem now and looking at a scenario where it's cloud-based and maybe you need to do some streaming. And some of these can kind of help as possible architectures for that type of thing as well. One of the things that I gave some of you my card, and you guys have got my email from the first slide as well. But if you go and you basically use one of these solutions, and if you have an issue with it or if you have feedback on how it could be improved, please send an email to cisolutions@microsoft.com. You can also contact your Microsoft sales team. It's kind of been a Thursday thing. I spent time with the solution sellers inside Microsoft 2 weeks ago, and then with a lot of the technical sellers just last Thursday, and so they're more aware of these technologies, and so they would be good people to contact as well. Also, if you want to visit your Microsoft MTC, the Technology Center, of course they can help do architectural design sessions and do other things off of this. And then we're going to talk a little bit about partners with the next slide. If you look at the solutions that are inside of AppSource, a number of those solutions have various partners that have been certified or trained on how to basically take these, help you with them, help you extend them. And there's a pretty good regional number of partners here that can help. And so if you go to the AppSource, you'll basically be able to find these partners there. And if you have any interest or have any type of relationship with any of these partners, let me know as well, and we can get you hooked up and make sure that they know about us, because they may not know about us everywhere, and kind of vice versa as well. On the roadmap side of things, One of the reasons that my group kind of trumped all my my demos earlier is that we're doing some bug testing, and we're moving towards general availability, and so it's kind of a soon. I heard a gentleman from outside of Microsoft. He does a great presentation. He is, I believe he's from Ireland or Finland, and he was saying that, you know, there's the Microsoft soon, so it could be, you know, it could be days or it could be more than days, but I think in our case it is more days or weeks as opposed to months. We're also working on more solution templates. So if any of you are also sort of more ISVs and customers and are interested in actually building some of these solutions, maybe to use internally for your organization to use in their sales motions and so forth, we'd be interested in talking to you about that. And then I also mentioned that we'll be looking at sort of these technical reference architectures, which are even a little bit more dedicated and precise than these solution templates, which are more accelerators. The session I talked about, there's been a lot of sessions. I didn't update my slide, but one of the advantages of going on Thursday is you get to see a lot of other things, and then you wish you could put them up on the slide as a reference. But Joseph's session will really give you a lot, especially on the deep learning sides of things, as well, you know, some of the work that was talked about with Esri and so forth, which was awesome there. On the bottom of the slide is the video, and hopefully I haven't talked too fast today, but the gentleman from the UK who does this video, he has a perfect voice and he's very easy to listen to. And so if you are interested in running the solution, including how to get a Twitter application and get the OAuth tokens and so forth, he goes through that. The one thing that Chris didn't do is he didn't do a very good demo of time series insights, but then I figured out that the reason he didn't do it is because my instructions on the instructions page weren't very good, so I went in and fixed that and added his video onto the instructions page as well. So you can find it in a couple of different places. And so hopefully I've showed you guys some of the capabilities there today that he doesn't cover in that, but he covers everything else. Session resources, I showed you guys these earlier. I want to go over and show you the GitHub page kind of as a final thing. And then let me switch over. And because what I wanted to do is just to kind of show you what what these look like. So we have the solution authoring workspace tutorials, which is for our group, and there's a number of samples out there. One of those samples is Twitter time series insights. And there's a button here that says deploy to Azure. That's also available on my Data Snowman GitHub, and if you go to my repositories, for the data science VM for this Kafka Spark, so it actually deploys a HT Insight Kafka cluster as well as a Spark cluster. It's a more expensive one to keep the number of nodes of that running. And then there's Twitter time series insights as well. So for any of these, you can come down, you can click on the deploy to Azure button. It's going to invoke this same UX that you saw earlier for quality assurance from AppSource. I'm going to give it a quick name so we can get to the Twitter credentials and stuff. So we're going to do test 1, 2, 3, 4. It's going to load this one. Time series insights, I believe, is only available in West Europe because of where time series insights is and where Azure machine learning is. I'm going to click on create. It's going to ask me for a user ID and password for SQL Server, just like the previous one did. When we did quality assurance, but I want to go past that so you can see the next set of scenarios. Also in the appendix of the slide deck, it goes through all these steps sort of slide by slide. So you're welcome to look at those, and that should be helpful along with the video. And let me just put in the password, click on next, and then I won't go past this. But this is the ones you're going to do next. So you can see there, you can see some keywords. You're very welcome to change that into something you're interested in. This year, my son is a soccer player, and so I was following some of the FIFA stuff, and I could actually see peaks in time series insights when Spain was playing Germany, as an example. You would go in and look at the tweets, and there would be a lot of German tweets and a lot of Spanish tweets, and you could tell when all the games were because there were big, huge peaks of tweets. And again, you would go in, put in your OAuth credentials. If you were to go out to Twitter, as an example, And if I went to my Twitter account, which is here, and then if I went to applications, so it is apps.twitter.com, basically you go in, you create an application, and then basically you get your OAuth tokens, your secrets and so forth. You take those, paste those into that previous screen, hit go, and it'll basically go and start creating data in a database that you can analyze in Power BI and data and time series insights based on what you want this particular solution to be. All right. So let me sort of just finalize this, and then I'll let you guys go because you guys have been, it's fantastic, and thank you for being here. And I want to get you guys out the door and to some good food and rides and whatever else you're going to do at the celebration. This kind of goes through and just kind of summarizes some of the different areas you can discover. Of course, the GitHub stuff isn't on here, but those are the things you can do. And some of the sort of selling points to this is this idea of deploy in minutes. Linux Data Science Virtual Machine deploys in 3 minutes. Of course, you can do that through the portal as well. And then some of the more complex ones may take 25 to 30 minutes. But really, you can build them in minutes, destroy them, build them again if you don't want to keep them running in the future. Of course, there's maybe a little bit of configuration you need to do. In the case of time series insights, you have to add yourself as a user and make yourself a contributor, and then you'll be able to see all the data. And then you saw the previous slide with the partners on it. So if you want to implement, extend, customize this, you can definitely work with the partner on that. This is kind of without all the details, kind of again gives you the idea of hopefully you fall into one of these industries or have one of these horizontal line of businesses in your company that would be helpful. And of course the IoT and big data and data warehousing stuff on the bottom, I think everybody can use some of that as well. This is the page just basically for the evaluation. Thank you for your time. Any questions? If you want to stay in your seat and mention it, I can actually say it back so it's on the recording, or step up to the mic. We're about we got about 4 minutes left, and if anyone has any questions, please let me know. If you want to come up and talk to me afterwards too, that would be great. Question, sir?
So in order to, do you have a sandbox environment available where one of these things can be invoked, so people don't have to pay for it just to try out?
Right. So the question is do you have a sandbox environment? We did have a sandbox environment, and we had some fraud use on it where somebody went out and spun up a bunch of Linux virtual machines and did. So we've had a sandbox in the past and had some challenges with it. The best scenario for a sandbox now would be to go out and get a free Azure account, which you would have for the month, and you could use that until the money was gone. We're looking at other scenarios for sandbox type scenarios, but and of course, but that was our challenge. So we were there, we were paying for it, and we just haven't figured out the right way to keep protect you as the user and protect us as a owner of that subscription. But
it would limit the current usage would limit like if you just want to try out test data set, spending $30 or $40 whatever that is per day, it's just going to limit the exposure of that.
Oh, exactly. It definitely is a friction for people to get started, and we know that. So, but thanks. That's a great question. But we've noticed that, and we're trying to deal with it. Hopefully, we'll have. We used to have something that was called Try It Free, and as I said, I'd hoped to talk about it here, but we've basically kind of backburnered it until we get through some of those challenges. But great question. Anybody else? Questions? Okay. All right. Well, thank you very much, and enjoy the rest of Ignite, and enjoy the evening. And thank you very much for your time and attention and being here so late. Thank you.